Well, one thing is for sure at this point in the primary process, the African American vote pivotal. Hillary Clinton, she won 75% of that constituency yesterday, and it sure has helped propel her to not only a big victory in New York, but in key states along the way. Well, Dom, he was at the National Action Network's conference last week, and that was a huge topic.
Decisive victories.
This is not about Bernie or Hillary personally. It's about who's going to sit on the Supreme Court. This is about continuing President Obama's Affordable Care Act and making sure Americans are insured.
You ever thought of a possibility of a President Trump?
Never in my fondest dreams have I ever thought that was even possible. To think that he is close to becoming the Republican nominee is almost unimaginable.
But on the Democratic side, there was much talk about why Bernie Sanders did not resonate in New York.
For the record, too, Dominic, we extended the very same invitation to all of the Republican candidates, and we did not hear back.
Mark Morial heads the Urban League and is the former mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana. He's part of a group that met with Clinton and Sanders.
In this race, he happens to be versus a Hillary Clinton who's got a long-standing relationship, a long-standing track record.
Jennifer Jones Austin is the executive director of the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies in New York City.
Bernie Sanders is saying what we all want to hear. And, and he believes in what he's saying, and we all should believe in what he's saying. But we've also got the practicality, right? There's that kind of idealism and there's the realism. And we've got to be very thoughtful about who can really get the job done.
Explain this premise. Why is the African American community so in lock with the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Relationships. Hillary has more relationships. I remember when I first met her, she was in the Delta of Arkansas and Mississippi handling free legal clinics. Then Children's Defense Fund. Then she worked on health care. Then she worked with the Congressional Black Caucus. A lot of relationships. Bernie, on the other hand, endorsed my campaign in 84 and 88. That was a big deal for our campaign as we whitened the face of the rainbow. So both have done good things, but I think Hillary's strength probably is in more relationships.
We have, somebody who's defining the issues, which is Senator Sanders, and is very good at it. And we have somebody who can solve the issues and is very good at it, which is Hillary Clinton.
Politics aside and the big name awardees, the conference also dealt with numerous issues impacting communities. The First Lady of New York City, Chirlane McCray, was on hand to passionately deal with the issue of mental illness.
It's all treatable, that we really do have the tools and the resources we need. We want society and we want government to catch up with the science and the research that are available to us now and make sure that people are getting services where they live, where they work, where they go to school, where they go to get help, because there's such a stigma around mental health.
A common theme, bringing positive change to urban America. Tragically, violence was an everyday occurrence in Jamaica, Queens back in the 1980s. Crack use and gun violence. Police officer Edward Byrne assassinated while guarding the house of a drug witness in 1988. Community activist Erica Ford has been leading an effort there, a major successful initiative to stop the violence with the assistance of young people. Media reports highlighted where just up until recently, there were no shootings for over 500 days. So because of your activism and the help of these young people, no shootings for 500 days?
No shootings for 500 days.
How long do you think you can keep this up?
Hey. Forever.
Forever?
Forever.
Wow. Why is this so important to you? Most people do a lot of talking, but they don't step up on the front line. These young people are stepping up, and you're stepping up. Why?
It's important because if you don't do the work, you don't save a life. And we know that so many young people and so many parents that are in here have lost their children to violence, and we want to stop the cycle of violence that is killing so many of our people.
And you know, Dominic, we've talked, there's been some really interesting conversations, and it seems in the same household, it's a generational one as
doubt
to,
about it.
you know, not only between Sanders or Hillary, but also the crime bill. It's different than even it was 8 years ago. You know, there's different things that are of the most importance, and there's different ideas in terms of history and where we are today versus maybe where their parents' generation was.
Well, what's interesting from talking to all the people at that convention last week, it was a forecast, an indicator, if you will, of what was going to happen. And basically it went like this, Richard. We like what Mr. Sanders is saying. We appreciate what Mr. Sanders is saying, but we don't see it as realistic, and we're going with the person that we came to the dance with, Hillary Clinton.
You remember 8 years ago how bitter it got towards the end. Bill Clinton thought that he was abandoned by relationships that he had cultivated for more than 20 years. And he thought, you know, that Barack Obama came to the party late. He believed in many eyes that he was the first black president, as many people told him. But at the end of the day, you know, the John Lewises and the rest, they looked at Barack Obama as obviously a historic candidate. I thought that bad will or ill will would have carried over, but as we've learned in many ways, politics tends to have short memories, don't they?
Well, great question. Let's keep in mind Hillary is the candidate this time, Hillary Clinton, not her husband. Every now and then he may get in trouble in terms of something he may say, or we saw both of them recently against the ropes for the crime bill, but strong support for the Clintons. What's going to be interesting, Richard, going forward? Because, well, I want you to imagine a scenario. If not for the African-American vote, where would Hillary Clinton be today? She'd be in trouble. To the pivot. What's going to happen now? Keep in mind, they have got to energize, coming after Obama, as you just mentioned, they have got to energize the African-American vote and pray that they turn out for Hillary Clinton if she's the nominee to be successful. What's going to happen as she pivots and goes mainstream with a general election strategy? It's going to be very interesting.
I'd be remiss here before we say goodbye. You're a proud Syracuse alum, and a sad passing today for Syracuse alumni. Pearl Washington, a basketball legend, and for some casual fans, they say who, but you were there at Syracuse, and you remember he was at the beginning, he was there for the birth of the Big East, along with Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullin, and others. He was a transcendent figure, a basketball street legend in New York City, and Jim Boeheim fighting back tears today, remembering one of his own. Pearl Washington, beloved up in Syracuse.
Still beloved. Tragic that we lost him. I remember walking around campus, and Pearl Washington, it didn't get any bigger than that. Richard, he was a very down-to-earth type guy. I looked about a month and a half ago, and I was very sad, but I was glad that the university embraced him. Coach Boeheim held a fundraiser, the team, for Pearl Washington, but unfortunately he didn't make it.
And he was there through their run through the whole NCAA tournament, but he succumbed to cancer. And again here, look it up on your own time, huge figure in not only college basketball, but New York City basketball as well. Dominic, thank you very much. All right, when we come back on the other side, a look at some local headlines.